Yes. Now, Mark Meadows on TV just said that all he was doing was following orders given to him by a superior, and so therefore they have to move the court because he was just following directions. Well, this morning on the way over here, my GPS on my car told me I had to use verbal commands. So when I got to a light when somebody cut me off, I gave him a verbal command. He got angry. It didn't work out that well. I don't know what his problem was. I was only following orders. All I did was tell him, "Hey, asshole, get yourself into a goddamn rotation."
I should do it.
Yeah, now go ahead and do.
Yeah, hopefully I'm timing all this shit right, because
I'm off the side of the screen too.
oh Jesus, we're just three big men, and
Yeah, we are. We just calculated we are at least 1/2 ton of fun.
I'm gonna put the camera on Tom's face.
Okay,
Move your face around.
now just as I think a great half a ton of fun would probably be a very good marketing ploy. Let's say that we are Suncoast Normal. My name is Gary Stein. I'm your political director for Suncoast Normal and our master of public health. To my far right, your left, is our deputy director, master of business administration, Carlos Angel Hermida.
Yeah, thank you,
and
everybody.
To our far right, coming to us from Maryland, above the Beltway, where he hits them below the Beltway, our executive director, Chris Kano, and our master of public administration. And we are the masters of cannabis. Oh, yeah, you get a sound effect. There you go. I think that those THC dabs may be a little bit too potent even for Carlos.
I love we have sound effects.
Absolutely. And of course, our guest star today is good friend of the show, serial entrepreneur, and master of all he surveys, Tom Quigley. Tom, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you guys for having me out here today in beautiful Ybor City. Back to our roots.
We are at 1714 7th Street, where it all began, across the street from where Victor Licata killed his parents and gave Harry Anslinger the motive to go ahead and make all this illegal. So thank you, Ybor City. Actually,
you're welcome.
That's a pretty crazy story for the people that know what you're talking about, the axe murders.
Yeah, it was just down the street from here. What was really interesting was the police chief actually did say that cannabis had nothing to do with him killing his parents with an axe. But Harry Anslinger loves a good story. So because of the fact that there happened to be some cannabis involved, he was actually bipolar and his parents were treating him. But they didn't take it that way. But that's the kind of things we've been dealing with, the kind of stigma we've been dealing with. And it won't be until we can get this stuff normalized. And that, I don't know how long it's going to take. that we are finally going to get the stigma to come away from cannabis. And I think, Tom, you've done an awful lot in regards to trying to do you can to normalize the product by concentrating on what the consumer wants as opposed to what the industry wants. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, and I think that people are more comfortable with things that they're familiar with. So, that's why we started it in a coffee shop. 7 billion people use caffeine, very comfortable with consuming coffee. But when you talk about a mild psychoactive like cannabis, everybody becomes fearful. So, being able to normalize that and compare it to a widely used psychoactive, caffeine, and take a little bit of the fear away from cannabinoids, THC, or any psychedelic or any psychoactive that maybe helps you to see things a little bit clearer. And that's really what we're talking about is, being able to see things clearer and make better choices and understand that, we've been tricked into believing that cannabis is this evil thing with no medical benefits.
I mean, we've seen commercials for coffee for years and years and years. And not once did I ever hear it being called a psychoactive.
It is. It brings focus. It gives you energy, and it allows a lot of people to understand, and start their day. How many people won't even talk to you until their first cup of coffee?
Mm-hmm. No, I'll talk to you, but you just might not like it.
Well, coffee spelled backwards is EFOC, and I don't give EFOC about anything you have to say until I have my coffee.
And some people can't get up without their cafefe in the morning either. I don't know who that might be.
Well, you know, Tom brings up a good point about psychoactives. Is coffee also is one of the few psychoactives that is combined with another psychoactive drug, and that's sugar.
Absolutely. One of the most widely used drugs I think that's out there. We have a coffee shop and say it to my wife all the time. You know, I feel worse about some of the candy and the ice cream and the sweet stuff that we sell out of our store than the cannabis related products or the hemp based products or the kratom that we brew. And, the things that people have a little bit of a fear from, but they'll grab a brownie at any moment with however many grams of sugar in it and eat it like it's nothing.
Now, Krispy Kreme was famous for pushing to have police come over to their place of business and get free coffee and donuts at any point in time, so they can have police presence around their donut shops and things of that sort. I often felt that having police who are high strung in the first place, doing nothing but consuming coffee and sugar all day, all night during their shift, may not be the best bet.
Well, we have a different option at our location. We can add CBD to your coffee. So
there you go.
With Jane's Brew was one of the first companies in California to combine caffeine and THC or cannabis. And a lot of people, were confused when they started doing that. But some research has shown that those cannabinoids and caffeine work on the same receptors in your brain, Gary, your andesine receptors. So it helps to give you that energy and that boost from the caffeine, and then the hemp or the CBD or THC level you out, that you don't get the jitters and you don't have a crash after. So the combining of those two psychoactives works synergistically together.
I'll tell you guys one of the times that Tom Quigley took me out to Colorado, we went to a House of Jane party, right? And it was different in the way that, like, I don't even think they sold alcohol at that party. Like, I don't think there was alcohol there. If there was, nobody was drinking it, because they were just like handing out like cannabis coffee, like cups.
No, it was iced tea, if you remember. So when you got in,
you could get coffee or iced tea.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they paid people to go and get people on the dance floor. Like there were tons of people that approached me and said, "Hey, you want to come and dance?" Like they had people that were paid to go and dance with people to keep the party going.
He thinks that they really just liked him. He's like, "There's no way anybody wants to dance with me, Tom." And then all of a sudden, people were asking him to dance, and he thought we paid him.
Now, I have a simple question.
Everybody was sitting down. Everybody was like so stoned at that party.
So, like, paid coffee workers?
And it was pretty cool, though. I like that party.
It's funny because that was one of the first times Mike Wong consumed THC. Oh, yeah. And Eric Stevens was there. I don't know if you guys, everybody should remember Eric Stevens they rode back to the hotel together in one of those little horse-drawn buggies because the both of them didn't know what to expect. But yeah, combining. But when I got into this space, I wasn't a big smoker. So when I found that you could drink cannabis and you could get the similar effects, and I don't drink alcohol, I thought it was ingenious. And that social aspect of it, brings people together as well.
Well, Carlos was in town for my birthday a few weeks back, and I gave him a tea. One of the things I like to do is I pick, when you're picking your bud off the stems, save the stems. Oftentimes they still have, THC crystals in them, and then you can put them in a tea ball and, and steep them and add a little bit of honey. And you got a nice little psychoactive tea for yourself. It's really calm and relaxing on the weekends.
Boy, I wish I'd known that in college when I had that huge jar of seeds and stems. That I could have just been brewing that shit and just collecting it and seeing how big of a jar I could get.
But Gary, they sprayed a lot of stuff on those crops back in the day when you were in college. So, that's the other drawback is you got to trust your source, because if it's not flushed properly, if there's pesticides, you can also end up drinking that stuff. So that's a caution to the consumer.
Well, that's an interesting topic. I wanted to breach with Tom today. That's something we had a discussion about a couple of days ago. They are often telling us when they're trying to put more regulations on us that we don't know what the consumers are taking into their bodies, that we don't know what it is, and they don't know what to do about it. And it's funny when you have a question and the answer is right damn there in your question. you want to know what's in it, get it tested. And then I find that they were remiss in testing in regards to purity, potency, and safety. But Tom, you make certain that every product that you have has had penultimate testing.
Yeah, lab testing is an important piece. Wow, did this just go on? Or I hit the wire. Yeah, lab testing is a big important piece of it, and
it wasn't working.
it wasn't working, or is working.
I guess it wasn't.
No, everything sounds great. You guys are doing good.
All right, we're getting confused. But lab testing, very important. We have QR codes on it. But I think that the companies that are making these products are sticking to the rules more often than they're not. And we've got food products in our food supply that aren't even tested to the point that we are the cannabis products. Our level of methanol acceptance on products here in the Florida market is much lower than what is allowed in vodka, for instance. So, people going out and drinking alcohol are actually consuming some more harmful. And, our food supply is really becoming, a place where, these pesticides and harmful contaminants are in more often. And we should be looking more at that.
That's what was so interesting to me about the whole hemp bill thing, where they were saying Delta 8 was made in an unsafe process. And the truth is that this isn't that process is actually an FDA approved process. The whole idea of changing CBD over to Delta 8, it is a dangerous process. Don't get me wrong. If it's done poorly, you could get somebody in trouble. But it's also the same way that a lot of like vanilla extracts are made, I believe. A lot of there's a lot of foods that we consume that we just can't farm it to meet with demand. And a lot of times, a lot of these foods are just synthesized. It doesn't mean that they're not like natural chemicals, but they are made in a lab.
Now, just so you know, if you are short on cash, sucking down bottles of vanilla is not a bad concept.
Well, Carlos, I'm glad you brought up this thing about the FDA, because they have been used as a crutch by these half-ass prohibitionists, if you will. These folks who, they say, oh, well, we need more testing, and it needs, the Kevin Sabets of the world, it needs to be FDA approved. And it's like
you're supposed to press the boo button.
But oh yeah, what, is there a boo? I don't think I have a boo.
Yeah,
it's just a drum beat. Don't start pressing buttons now, Tom. Oh jeez, now everything's going again.
Hello.
No,
and don't start chasing waterfalls either.
I want to take it a step further, because the truth is that cannabinoid testing for cannabinoid processes, I mean, people who grow cannabis, people who know about cannabis know that cannabinoid testing is kind of bullshit. I can have one bud, cut it in half, I can send it to one testing lab, and I can send the other half to the other testing lab, and I'm going to get two different results back. Right? And the testing for cannabinoid levels, I think it's a little bit of a scary tactic by prohibitionists. I think that's why we end up wrapped into these like THC caps here, because it lumps everything in with like harmful metals and pesticides and all these different. Oh
no, we got a little bit of a freeze on y'all's end.
That's the truth. That's really what I'm missing. That's fucking Wi-Fi. But no, what I was saying is like, the poisonous metals and poisonous levels of toxics and whatever. That's what I really want to see. But cannabinoid testing is just bullshit. Cannabinoid testing is never really going to give you an accurate description of the product.
Well, the plant's always changing. Just like a banana changes in sugar content. The cannabis plant, whether it's cut from the cola, it's cut, from a different part of the plant, you're going to have different results. And they're trying to drift, take things and standardize them and make it apply to everything. But as we know, product changes over time, it degrades even.
Yeah. Well, I find it here in the DC area where they have a gray market, a lot of people want to be legitimate. They have brands. They put, what symptoms that the cannabis is helpful for, depending on the cultivar. They'll even list, what the average THC content is in it. And the fact is that people are prone to marketing. We're creatures that are very visual. So, if you put a higher THC content on a package, people will pay more money for it. But the fact is that sometimes the bottom shelf bud is just as good as the top shelf stuff that these guys are selling. It's like, as a consumer, you're almost cheating yourself sometimes if you're not an educated consumer. And to Carlos's point, you're right. A lot of cannabinoid testing isn't really reliable. So that goes back to the fact is, can this ever be a scientifically regulated product through the FDA without putting it into a pill form? And I mean, that's the conundrum, because if you try to extract these chemicals, put them in a pill form, it has been shown that it does not work effectively. That the entourage effect, the ensemble effect, whatever you want to call it, that you have to have it as a full spectrum plant-based derived medicine for it to work effectively in the vast majority of people.
Maybe we can't have Marinol, but we can have like for the first one that came to my mind, it's a bad example, but green crack pills or something like that.
What I when we were in the hospital, they did give my mom Marinol for appetite.
Yeah.
And I was impressed that the doctor suggested it to us. He said, are you okay with marijuana? And we were like, oh, well, of course. But yeah,
They gave him Marinol instead, right?
Yeah.
You're asking me, Tom Quigley, if I'm okay with marijuana? Like, let's do a quick Google search, guys.
Well, that comes to, I don't want to shift topics completely, but does anybody here, or do you guys grow your own? Anybody growing their own yet, or
Not legally, no.
to grow?
I have a mold problem in my basement, so I'm holding off until I get that abated.
Those are called mushrooms.
I can't even clip my toenails on a regular schedule. Like, I can't grow at home.
Well, I've tried to grow tomatoes. I've had to try, but it intrigues me because there is a lot of talk about grow at home laws being passed to allow people to start growing at home, and then know exactly what kind of pesticides, know exactly what kind of soil, know exactly what kind of nutrients that are being used, and what kind of strains that they're able to produce and reproduce.
And there's products like Garen's little grow.
Yeah.
Like, there's products that you can take home,
Which he kind of borrowed from Israel.
Well, that's an actually.
Yeah, there was a product in ArcView when we were going through that leaf box that this is a concept that's been around for some time. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I remember reading High Times magazines from 07 where just put your seed in the soil and then the thing will sync to your iPhone and you can monitor the whole growth cycle. And I mean, that's always been the goal of modern technology, is to allow the consumer to essentially push a button and let their cannabis kind of grow because cannabis is something that requires a lot of attention to detail. I mean, I have tried cultivating over the years numerous times and have failed on every single crop. It is an art form in a lot of ways, and it requires a lot of patience.
Well, what's interesting that you bring up Leaf, because I remember Leaf very specifically. Yeah. They raised like $6 million. Great concept, but they never made it work. There was a guy from Florida that moved out to Boulder, and they took that project. What's interesting is Garen's actually taken it and made it work in their new machines. They have AI technology in there, from what I understand. I've seen it. I've actually tasted a tomato that's come out of it that tasted amazing. Like, they use the same conditions and temperatures that would be in Sicily, Italy, to grow a tomato.
Was he using heirloom seeds?
I believe heirloom, and they had a sweet tomato. But the interesting thing about it is if that technology can evolve and get to that point, then it is a choice for future.
I think we're getting pretty close.
We're getting close.
Yeah, I think so.
And you think everybody will have one in their house soon?
I think pretty soon we'll have something like that. And I think, honestly, if you look at agriculture as a whole, we're just gonna need to grow inside our house pretty soon.
But the reason I brought up heirloom, for those of you not familiar with the topic, heirloom seeds are seeds of various cultivars that are old-fashioned, that were there before all the new chemicals came on board, all the new pesticides and things of that sort. So they didn't really develop any immunity to those products as far as damaging the plant is concerned. And so with heirloom stuff, you really have to be growing very clean, because they really can't tolerate all the things that we do to plants nowadays.
I think we had the technology for this grow box for a while. I think Garen's just been able to package it, sell it, throw it out into the market, like and do a good job representing it and show people why they need it.
Well, food,
Yeah.
I never realized what they do to our food to extend its shelf life removes like anywhere from 50 to 70% of the nutritional value.
If you want your food to not come from Bill Gates, you're gonna have to start growing at home pretty soon.
Well, I'm considering it. So we're considering getting one of those machines in our house. Me and my wife were talking about it because I started cutting out different foods while I'm trying to get healthy again. And I found that I cut out red meat and I'm not breaking out in my rashes. I had this Lamisil they wanted to give me for an infection in my toe. And I decided to change my diet a little bit. Since I started using cannabis, my eyesight has been getting better. So I'm starting to find that, a lot of different changes in whether the things that I consume, have effects on me healthy wise.
Is that part of the process in regards to how you develop products for Chill Coffee and other places you work?
Yeah, so at Chill Coffee, we don't put anything out there I wouldn't give to my own mom, to myself, or my family, and we develop things and, we take time because the communities come out to trust us. Many of our customers that come in there, they would never go into a smoke shop. They would never go into a medical marijuana dispensary, but they come in and they trust us to teach them about, some of these products. And, we try and not just, the hemp-based products, but, whether it's kratom tea or all natural products, or even help to guide them towards, using psychedelics. So I wrote a few books recently, one on ayahuasca and one on how I grieved my mom's passing with ayahuasca. And so we kind of try and share that. So we're more of a think tank in there besides just distribution of products.
Yeah, what is your latest book, by the way? Because I know that you had one that came out recently, correct?
So the latest one was Just a Prince. So I wrote that after my mom passed. I took an ayahuasca retreat to help me grieve her passing, and it helped me to see things clearer and
Where'd you
really
go
get through it.
How'd you do the retreat?
I went to Orlando, so there's a place called Soul Quest out
Yeah,
there.
Soul Quest.
Yeah, and we've been sending people there for 10 years since we had Florida Cannabis Coalition, and I never had the calling to go myself. But after my surgery, they put me on opioids while I was in the hospital. I was in there for an extra 8 days. I got hooked on Ativan, came out of the hospital. Christmas was a blur. New Year's was a blur. Started falling into a deep depression again, unfortunately. And I decided that I had to do something. And I went spur of the moment with two of my good friends, the guys that did my surgery on my back, and went back in January. And my anxiety was gone. I came back and I started feeling like myself again. And I realized that it was what I needed at the time.
So the way that I understand ayahuasca, there's, every person, call them what you will, shaman, right? Mixes ayahuasca in a different way, and there's a different, let's call it procedure to their ceremony. So there's different results throughout the entire ayahuasca world. This obviously was a great experience for you. So, my question is, what about that experience at Soul Quest was like was what you needed, was your medicine?
And to the plebeian folks out there, what is ayahuasca and how does it work?
So ayahuasca is it's a vine, and it's been cultivated and combined with a root to make an elixir or a drink that you consume that releases natural DMT in your body. And DMT is something that they call the spirit molecule. And basically what it does is it allows you to utilize parts of your brain to, in simple terms, learn more. So you go through a psychedelic experience and you go through it with a shaman. A lot of people go down into the Amazon, into Brazil or Peru. Historically, that's been traditionally the way to do it. And it's all about your setting, your intentions. And it's a very personal journey, but you're doing it with other people, so you get very connected. So there's a connected consciousness there. So you're able to understand. And for me, it allowed me to be a little bit more empathetic to my fellow man and woman, and understand that we all have our own struggles, and a lot of them are battling them independently, but we kind of all are the same. We really are all the same when it comes down to it. And ayahuasca just allowed me to see that and remember things a little bit differently.
Have you ever heard of Bufo?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to do a Suncoast Normal Bufo retreat. and the guys are a little hesitant. I think Tiffany was one of our board members was cool with it, but I say we do it.
And speaking of Tiffany, by the way, so SoulQuest, if you think you're getting free marketing out of this, just so you know, she will be sending you emails.
What'd you say?
Bufo is another way of taking DMT, and it's a secretion from a frog. And you take the secretion and you smoke it. So
this is better than licking the toads.
Like, is that a real thing?
That's Bufo, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you lick his belly.
You lick its belly? I thought you just smoked it.
Have you ever seen Buddy Games?
So like there's really like I don't think there's like a traditional, but there's no like native traditional way of doing it. But I hear this is like experience. Like this is like you melt into the universe type of thing.
Your experience is very important of who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Your environment and where you are. So I felt.
Oh, come on. We still freezing up over here.
Very comfortable when I went to SoulQuest. There was medics. Carlos keeps having these pop-ups.
There we go. Give it a half a second.
Pornhub.
I think your landlord's a socialist and probably a carnivore.
How's that? That working all right?
Yeah, no, we're back now. So, Tom, you were mentioning about, it's important to have the right people around you if you're going to take a psychedelic experience.
Correct. And, what I found is that, cannabis can be used in this same therapeutic setting. It's all about being grounded, setting intentions, and then more importantly, what steps you take after you have your awakeness or your awareness that comes to you to make the things happen that you've realized that you need to do differently in your life. And it's really the work afterwards, after your experience that's gonna show how you.
That's one thing that I'm interested in getting normal to do too, is like hosting, with medical marijuana card holders, of course, but hosting cannabis ceremonies.
Well, we did one recently with Pablo and the veterans.
Oh, we lost the feed again. So we'll wait till the feed comes back. Oh,
we did a cannabis retreat.
Carlos, the internet keeps freezing up over there at Chillum. I don't know what's going on today.
Hardwired into the Spectrum.
It's hardwired now. It's not on Wi-Fi anymore, right?
Connect automatically.
We are connected. I have two different Wi-Fi's here, and I have the ability to hardwire into the Spectrum. And I've tried all three of them. All three of them have failed during this show.
Wow. Okay. Well, Spectrum sucks. There we go. That's the problem with monopolies these days.
So does Verizon, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, I got a message from Spectrum the other day telling me I owed the bill, but they told me to go online and go ahead and pay it. And I went to pay it, and I noticed that the Spectrum website was down. So the people who are in charge of my internet have a system that is going down. That is very, very ingratiating.
Yeah. Well, we live in a time where everything has become so interconnected, we become so dependent. I think that to the point we were talking about earlier about being able to grow your own products, being able to grow your own food, your own cannabis is the way of the future, because we're fastly developing a place where it's harder to find clean air. It's hard to find clean water. And that if you're going to grow your plant in an outdoor environment, outdoor is not safe in a lot of times. I mean, we had the Canadian wildfires recently that spread particles all over the eastern seaboard. We still one of the things I found interesting is that as we have this push towards electric vehicles, that the largest producer of particles in the atmosphere still remains brake pads in the world. We still haven't figured out how to stop cars, with a different system. And as those brake pads touch your car to slow it down, they're kicking up tons of particles. Look at the brake dust on your tires. There is more emissions from brakes than there are dirty emissions coming out of tailpipes in this country. And so, so even if you drive a Tesla, you're still contributing to putting particles in the air. And so I think that as we move forward, part of legalization has to be the right to grow at home. The fact that we don't have that in Florida means we don't have legalization. What we have is a corporate structure that allows an oligopoly of corporations to give you your medicine. And to Carlos's point earlier, as Bill Gates buys up more and more farms, can you really trust the mass amount of meat coming into the supermarkets? Tom, you said you had to cut out of your diet. I buy directly from small farms now here in Maryland if I'm going to buy meat, because after I saw that documentary on Netflix that the Trump administration got rid of 40% of the inspectors in our meat plants, I'm like, well, who's watching what's going into the meat? And the answer is nobody.
Yeah. And this is happening in Florida too, because our dear governor over here vetoed a ton of money that it was supposed to go towards inspectors for the Department of Agriculture.
So how do we know what the corporate booth actually has contained in it, other than the lab results that they paid to produce, right? Because we've also found that scandal that some of these MMTCs are paying labs to give them favorable results that they can slap on a shelf and use for sale products.
And that's been going on forever, ever since Steep Hill. Remember Steep Hill?
Tom, when was the last time you were inspected by the Department of Agriculture?
About a year ago.
About a year ago?
Yeah, about a year ago.
And I must have had like 7 inspections.
Now they came into my Riverview store about 6 months ago, but we don't have, I have a very small variety of products that we have in each store, and so I don't carry a lot of the additional products that are out there,
Like mushrooms.
I didn't start carrying the mushrooms. It wasn't my customer base. I didn't want to overwhelm them. So, I still get the 60, 70-year-old woman that comes in and she's whispering about it because she feels like if she uses CBD, she's been lying her whole life and she doesn't want to say she never used a drug in her life, So we still have those conversations. And sometimes some of those other products or even some of the flour we don't have in our location kind of scare those people. So we're trying to change them one at a time. But the good news is that most of that work's been done for us. Now I've got people coming in and trying to tell me what's going on in the industry. I love it. But, so I feel that there is a lot of more information out there, but unfortunately there's a lot of misinformation still, especially to our older population.
And I think, with all due respect to the lady who said that she's never taken a drug in her life, that would only be true if she didn't bother eating anything for the rest, for all of her life. It's almost impossible nowadays to have food that does not have some kind of medicinal product in there that I was either bound for the cows or bound for the chickens or bound for the plants.
And thinking about it, we, in the wake of the late Robert Platt showing, we're kind of need a silver tour for psychedelics.
Well, there was a guy that was doing microdosing over 50, cultivated wisdom. He was at the Canadelic event. There was something along those lines, but I think some kind of a tour, at least, to help people. And the book that I wrote, the last book that I wrote was called Dare, Drink Ayahuasca, Remember Everything. But it could also be used for any other psychedelics like mushrooms. And it's a notebook or a journal to set your intentions, know what to expect if you're going on a psychedelic experience. Because, all these people are hearing about it right now, but they're afraid. I'll tell you right.
How many books have you written?
Oh, gosh. I was writing. Yeah, I wrote about 6 or 7 altogether, starting with, you remember, Corporate to Cannabis back in 2017. I wrote a number of books on business startups because I was doing that when I was at Canopy Boulder out in Colorado. So Don't Be Stuck at Startup, I finally finished. And then the 3 books on ayahuasca, which was I Am a King.
So you've done 3 books on psychedelics. Huh?
I did 3 books on psychedelics. And then I have one that we're doing with Wise Warrior, which is what I'm wearing right here, which is something I'm very, very excited about.
No, we're still on.
Are we still on? Which is Boxing for Mental Health. And it's a program developed out of Israel using Krav Maga, and they were using it with extreme victims of violence. And it's been effective for the last 10 years. And we're working on bringing it here to the United States. It's a 12-week mental health therapy that uses the techniques of boxing to help you to understand things like being grounded, dealing with anxiety, being able to overcome fears, all of the things that a boxer would have to encounter when he goes into the ring.
Strategizing on your feet.
Correct. And in your mind, fighting for your mind.
Well, Tom, I got to say the moral imperative in looking at psychedelic prohibition is that these things should not be illegal. They should not be overly regulated. One, because they come from nature, but two, because the human brain, when it's infected by trauma, needs rewiring. It needs a reset in a lot of ways. And it seems like you experienced personal trauma and you had that ayahuasca trip. It gave you a reset. I mean, I could just tell the amount of energy I'm just getting through the cyber links from you is a lot different than, the last time I saw you. So, I mean, obviously it works, right?
I feel it. I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I came into the cannabis industry as a patient. I've had some traumatic things that happened to me in my life, in my past, that I was therapy resistant. I never worked very well with mental health therapists. I've gone and I've seen them. I've sat there and nothing ever worked. And, cannabis was, I got into it because of my pancreas, but I found that it was something that helped me with my mental health therapy, but it helped me in an unguided way. It just helped me to calm those noises in my brain. And Steve D'Angelo said it to me years ago, was cannabis is that mild psychoactive. If we could start opening up everybody's brains and allow them to learn new information. And I met with a therapist that does ketamine treatment, a little bit different than what ayahuasca is. And she said something very interesting to me, that when you use psychedelics, whether it's cannabis or ayahuasca at the extreme, or ketamine, or, psilocybin, it allows your brain to learn new information. And it gives you that ability to change your viewpoint. And if you could do those things, you can grow. And then you go from PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, to post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, most of the doctors that we were associated with the Florida Cannabis Coalition have opened ketamine clinics. Rosado has one. And Dr. Wiener also has one.
Yes, it's very, very effective.
Yeah, and honestly, like that's I mentioned those cannabis ceremonies before, and it's that's kind of what I'm interested in.
And the same thing can be done with cannabis. Again, it's about the setting. So the big thing at ayahuasca is that for me, it was almost like forced meditation. You're on a mat for 4 years. 4 hours, 4 years. Sometimes it feels like 4 years.
Time dilation is a thing. Yeah.
And people come, but you're there thinking, it's and a lot of people could get to that place through yoga, through meditation. I'm not one of them. But I needed it.
Yeah. But you use not only the medicine, but also guides as well. And I see that in natural products sometimes, that the natural product can guide yourself in as far as manufactured molecules, and that includes ketamine. You need to have people who know how to administer it and monitor it while it's being used.
Also, not to cut you off, but the voice is in your head. So just like having a gym buddy, going to the gym and working out with somebody, if you have somebody that helps you get through a cannabis experience, any psychedelic experience, yoga, and that's what happens in the boxing environment, is that you're reinforcing good behaviors again. And you're taking, so many of us self-medicate, and many people self-medicate with bad things like alcohol and heavier drugs and depressants and sedatives,
or food and sugar.
Food and sugar are the most widely and supported things out there. But, we use cannabis and we kind of self-medicate with it as well. But if we had somebody to guide us through that experience, kind of like a buddy or a ceremony, whether it's using cannabis, yoga, boxing, we can help each other.
It's the same parallel as when you have a family member in a coma. What do they tell you? Talk to them, bring them back. The human psyche, is a very powerful thing. It can manifest its own hallucinations. It can manifest its own, fears and traumas and visual and auditory type of things. And so you're right. Having a comforting voice to guide you along the way as you face your trauma is just something that makes sense to me.
You guys familiar with this Bionic Bloom place?
Bionic Bloom.
What's that, Carlos? Help us educate us.
They were at Canadelic, and I believe they have a location in St. Pete and Clearwater at this point. But this is psychiatrist. This woman, her background, she started off going to school to learn law, changed from law school to psychiatry, which is a crazy move. But whatever, she did it. She became a psychiatrist. And she claims, I don't know how truthful this is, but she claims that when she saw what I was doing with the mushroom dispensary, it inspired her to register her psychiatric practice as a church, right? And now she claims this place is right here in Clearwater, Florida. Now she claims she's the first person to do legal psychedelic therapy with psilocybin. Because she's administering psilocybin through her church and offering psychiatric treatment as a licensed psychiatrist.
And that's how they do it at Soul Quest is, and that's what a lot of these churches, whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca, it's a sacrament.
Yeah.
So if you're allowed to consume that sacrament, and it's a very smart way to do it. I think there was a group that did the ease method. And they were out of Atlanta, Georgia, that were at Kenadelic as well. I sat on a panel with one of the women from there, and very similar. And they do a 90-day. And what I really like that they're doing is they're not just giving people psychedelics and then setting them on their way. They have a system, almost like a 12-step system, similar to people that, quit drinking alcohol or try and change, because really you have to change your belief system. So once you may get the wake-up call through using the psychedelics, but without doing reinforcement, integration, and practicing what you've learned that's new, you can't really get it into your belief system. So
yeah, I've heard some people represent psychedelics as all you need is the psychedelic. You don't need any guidance.
That's
the mushroom will show you a week or 2 weeks later.
that's
There's
the problem.
lazy. Yeah, there's a lot of faith behind that, but I see a lot of these people also have a lot of issues that they're still working out and kind of ignoring. So
and those are the people preaching it, and because they're not fixed yet. And I'm not saying that against saying, but I was that way at one point myself, with cannabis.
No, I mean, psychologically, human beings require ritual, Tom. So you brought up that point about the 12-step program. It's about creating ritual, because ritual is what gives us structure in everything, in our faith and religions and so belief systems. And so if you want to reinforce a belief that you're healthy, you have to go through these rituals, if you will, in order to reinforce it, because that's how the human brain is. It's to Carlos's point that he made earlier, you can't just do the psychedelic and expect to get better, because it's a one-time thing. It's a one-off thing. But if you have a ritual, if you have respect for it, and then you reinforce it, and then it becomes a pattern, that's when you finally get to that point of you can grow, you can heal, and it becomes something that you do every day, rather than this one-off experience that you have that's fleeting for one time.
It's
provided the ritual is bound in reality. I mean, I've always thought that communion was a strange offshoot of cannibalism.
No,
I grew up Catholic.
This body of Christ thing is I don't want to eat his body. No, it's
like wine and crackers. This is wine.
But, and crackers. But Gary, to the point of
the first place I had alcohol was a bar mitzvah.
Or the Passover feast, right, Gary? I mean, that's ritual, right? Eating food that you normally wouldn't eat on a regular basis. It's having a struggle meal, to connect with your ancestors.
I would rather eat the horosis rather than make bricks out of sand and haul them up ramps for 24 hours a day, as it's supposed to be symbolic of. So I would suppose that would be correct.
This is a psychedelic heavy show. I like it because I believe we advertise you as a finance guy. I think so. But
I guess I used to be. Now I'm a barista.
But I think your bio is all Tom is passionate about helping companies find financing in the industry or whatever.
I still do that. I do still do that.
Either way, I want to keep talking of psychedelics. And I'm happy that you said the ritual part of things, Kenna, because I always kind of draw a dichotomy between religion and science, but in this case, there seems to be some like tradition value to the spirituality behind psychedelics. I don't know if you guys saw like what happened at the end of the MAPS conference. You guys saw that?
Yeah, there was a native indigenous
Yeah,
activist
right.
who was complaining about, basically the colonization of their rituals that they've had in part of their culture.
And right during Rick Doblin's speech, and Rick Doblin is like, he's pushing MDMA. This guy is going to legalize MDMA basically. And he's doing his speech at the end, and he's like the big shit in the MAPS world too. And I saw him talk. He was at Canadelic in Miami, and that was an awesome talk too. But they crashed the party, and like a lot of people were pissed off, and like you even see like some reactions from you don't look indigenous.
They talk about Western use of psychedelics and I guess the South American how the traditions and the rituals are much different, and that there are those thoughts that we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And I can see where that comes from.
I could see that 100%. 100%. I'm selling Amanita muscaria and gummies, and not as the shamans in Siberia used to. We're not drinking Amanita pee.
I mean, I've seen so many cultures that have based a lot of their rituals upon their own experiences. Way back in China, the whole idea of using cannabis as medicine was hooked into the idea of yin and yang, as far as a cultural is concerned, where some people are deficient in yin and some people are deficient in yang, and you get a balance from cannabis. So it was all a matter of a cultural norm being used to apply to how medicine was used.
Not just cannabis, plants. So look at it as plants.
I think it's really important here too, because like, I mean, myself and Tom Quigley here fancy ourselves a bit of entrepreneurs, but
fancy, yeah.
Here's the thing though, is like we can't like be against innovation. Like there's a way that these things have traditionally been done for thousands of years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like 100% perfect. And I think honestly, showing some love to the tradition here, and really getting some psychoanalysis in the process is really going to be beneficial here. I think that's where like everything needs to go, but we got to remember where everything comes from.
And that's the thing, but how do you bring it to the masses? And that's why it's adapting and changing, because truly the traditional way of doing it, flying down to Brazil, taking a 2-day trip down, and then riding for 8 hours in a
traditional way of doing it, though.
No, but
that's the way that culture had capitalized on the traditional way of doing it, because all these Westerners were coming down there. The traditional way of taking ayahuasca, the treatment, and tell me if I'm wrong, the shaman took it. It wasn't the person looking for the answers. It was the person that had the bridge over to the spirit world would take the spirit quest and come back and report their findings.
They take it together.
Yeah.
Well, that's also peyote.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different, and I think that's probably the people that came at the MAPS, from what I'm hearing, because peyote is a very sacred a plant as well. And I went to Arizona years ago, and I actually took a Jeep tour with a Native American Indian. And I remember asking him it, and he got so angry at me. Yeah. And he's like, we don't use that except for but it was at a point where I had liver disease, and I was out there going to the vortexes, and I was trying to find out, how to use it. But he assumed that I was there and just wanting to trip.
I'm going to completely butcher the name. I've always butchered the name of it. The Mazatepec area in Mexico. You go to that area. That's where Maria Sabina came out of.
Mm-hmm.
That's like where like the first pilgrimage for magic mushroom journeys, or whatever you want to call them. That was the first place to do it, like fucking Life magazine and all that. But you go there, and the traditional way of doing things is like, oh, I can't see out of my left eye, I need to take mushrooms. You know what I mean? I'm struggling with alcoholism, my leg hurts. There was some sort of medicinal reason why you would want to go on this journey.
Well, again,
and to that point, I know somebody that went down there and did that, and they do an interview with you very similar to that, and then they do a blend of mushrooms. So it's not just one mushroom; they have like 20 or 30 different ones.
Yeah, and during that interview, I'm willing to bet like you run the risk of being, get out of here, you druggie. Like, if you say the wrong thing, they'll kick you out and they'll be like, you're disrespecting the medicine. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the point, Carlos, is that psychedelic experience is one of the most awesome forces that we've encountered as humans. And in the modern Western tradition of American capitalist society, we wield it irresponsibly, like a kid who's found its dad's gun in some ways. And before you know what you have, you packet it and you market it and you're selling it, and boom, you got to sell it. You got to sell it, to quote, Jeff Goldblum.
Just like Jurassic
Exactly. And that's a concern that I could see a lot of indigenous folks have, right? Is that you're taking something that had a spiritual, religious, cultural connection, and then you utilize this outside of it, and people will take that as disrespect, or they take it as a misuse. And I think the reverence for people's beliefs are important. But more than that, once modern society finds something that's valuable, how soon is it before these land races or these genetically unique substances are torn down because there's a rush? Quinoa is a perfect example. This is something that vegetarians are using as a staple now, that the natives of Peru used as a staple for many years, and now the people who have survived off of it for thousands of years can't get it. They can't eat it because it's become commercially manufactured. The land's been bought up. They don't even have access to it in their own homelands anymore.
That's why there's a process to change CBD to Delta 8. Maybe we can change rice into quinoa.
Well, the DEA just recently said that if you make Delta 8 from CBD, it should be considered illegal. So we still have a major issue in this country with our own agencies and how they view things.
Well, everything's, it's sad how things have turned from 10 years ago to what they are now, and that now it's no longer a movement trying to gain access for everybody. It's a land grab to who can control and tax it and make the most revenue off a plant that we all fought for them to just listen to us to say that it worked.
Is that basically a shift from the patient to the profit?
Yeah, they don't care. Well, I hate to say that, but right now it's all about controlling who can sell it, and that's what we're seeing with what they did with you, Carlos, and
big hemp versus little hemp, and big cannabis versus hemp, and
even
activists are
splitting up. Some of them are going,
some are that I've seen, like the way I've looked at the hemp industry. I mean, this is a way to get cannabinoid medicine to people that need it. Whether or not you disagree with me, whatever, it could be bad, it could be good, whatever. But there are people that I never would have thought would be against getting cannabinoid medicine to people that are outright against it, because, and they tend to work,
and vice versa too. I think there's a lot of people who are coming out for it that you would have never expected that they would be in favor of it.
Yeah.
But once they get to a crisis, they find out that it actually is the actual treatment. People tend to turn around.
And then you got amendments to legalize marijuana that activists are for or activists are against, and I never thought I would be. I think personally I'm going to come out against Smart and Safe Florida. I haven't taken a personal stand against it.
I'm against it.
Yeah, and I think I would have never seen the day 10 years ago that I would have been against an amendment to legalize marijuana.
Well, people often say, "Be careful to sacrifice the good for the perfect."
Yeah, and
this bill is far from perfect, and I don't even think it's good enough to say it'll improve the industry. It's for people. There are certain things that people are trying to get out of this, and they aren't necessarily the consumer.
Well, what I find ironic is Attorney General Moody's arguments against Smart and Safe Florida are the ones that we've been making. And I'm like, since when has Ashley Moody ever been an ally to us? Never. But she sees good arguments, and I feel flattered, that she would use them. She's like, oh, well, it deceives the voters because you don't get to grow it at home. It deceives the voters because it essentially is a handout to the industry. And I'm like, yeah, we've said that, over multiple iterations of these petitions over the last few years. But the fact is that the Smart and Safe Florida petition does not deceive anybody. It is very clear cut if you read it. It just essentially allows the existing MMTC license holders to sell over-the-counter bud without a doctor's recommendation. That's all it does.
And in conjunction, they want to shut down the entire hemp market. So it pushes all the people that got used to using cannabinoids in there without a medical card to spend money that's taxed on products that it will be taxed at 28 to 30% to the end user. So
Now,
the consumer is the one that's going to really hurt it with this.
by the way, committee weeks start next week, guys. And that means once again, we're going to get back into another fight like we did all last session, where they did their best to try to shut down the hemp industry.
It's gonna happen. They already said it's
I
gonna
read it in the paper this week. It's coming back. Yep.
My customers are coming into me and they're saying, "Hey, did you hear that the hospitalizations are up?" You know, all this negative narrative that they're starting to push out there into the general public that doesn't know any better. You know, they're consuming that information and they think making people go to the dispensary is the best choice for the customer.
Man, I already told everybody at Chillum. I think it's important that I tell everybody at Normal too. When I have a heart attack, when that happens, it's gonna happen soon.
Don't have a heart attack.
When that happens, don't take me to Tampa General.
Gotcha.
Pepin's always good.
St. Joe's it is.
Yeah,
So
for real. They are gonna look at my blood and they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, there's so much weed in here." Throw me out on the street.
It's sad that the political. This has become so political. All of you got into this because one reason or another you wanted to help someone. Whether it was a family member or yourself, or you have this desire to help other people. I see in front of me, 3 people who care very much about the people they love and the people around them, and you want to make sure that people have safe access to this healing product. And then you have these politicians that have moved from this is the devil's lettuce and we should, kill any heretics who use it to, oh my God, we need to keep this only in the hands of the people who we've selected to sell it. And that's where we're at right now in society.
And those people are all backed by billionaires now. All the biggest families that were controlling, businesses like Rite Aid and Wrigley's and Victoria's Secret, they all have their hand in this industry now. They saw the way that it's going, and they want to control it.
Jeffrey Epstein did not hang himself.
He did it?
No, Mitch Perry asked the question at that conference where it was like, you guys are so concerned about these brands being misrepresented. Have we reached out to any of the brands? And I was like, holy shit! It's like isn't like Skittles partially own Sutera? Like, wouldn't that
Actually, the Wrigley company owns the Skittles trademark, and they get one after the people who use that as a name for their cultivar, as a representation of their intellectual property.
You said it last week, Gary. Like it was, Skittles should totally, like Wrigley, Sutera should sue these people.
Well, these are outright, counterfeit almost. Whereas if you remember back in like 2014, a company called Hashies was in California. Bryce, I don't know if you remember Bryce, if anybody remembers him, but they got sued by Hershey's, and their brand was Hashies. It didn't look like a Hershey's bar, but it was close enough, and they were forced to stop with that product in the market.
Well, I'm glad you brought up this whole thing about being fraudulent in a lot of ways. One of the things that has irritated me about Operation Candy Crush, which is the current crackdown on the hemp stores by the Department of Agriculture, is I've seen pictures being held up of illegal products from California. These are not Florida-based products. Entrepreneurs like Tom and Carlos are not selling these products. What you have is a handful of gas station owners who are, essentially moving products across state lines, which is illegal. And they're using illicit products and they're selling them. And they're holding that up as examples of what the type of business you all are doing. And that's not right. But they're using it to make a political argument.
I am sure that I could speak for Tom on this one, but like that type of marketing where, Skittles packaging. That's lazy fucking marketing. Like
Very
that's-
lazy.
Yeah, like that's not something that a serious entrepreneur is take a hold of. I take big pride in the way I market my company. I know Tom does too. So that's nothing you'll ever see in like a responsible store.
Well, I think
You know,
that the cannabis industry should go back to school. They should get their Six Sigma certification. They should read the Art of Persuasion. They should apply this. If you're going to be a business and you're going to act like a businessman,
Six Sigma.
yeah, do
Six Sigma. Who took the keys to my Beamer?
Well, Carlos, you bring up a good point. Gary, you're making it right now.
But I'm sorry, Keno, but
Oh,
what
good.
the Department of Agriculture needs to do is what Tom said. The issue here is not companies that go to the Department of Agriculture, pay for a license, and subject themselves to inspections, right? These are companies that just throw that shit on the shelf and don't give a fuck because they know that the Department of Agriculture is not going to come in and like start poking at
How many bodegas have Department of Agriculture inspectors walking in?
they don't have
Or
enough
markets,
inspectors.
Sunday
Yeah.
markets. People set up at these markets at Armature, and they're all
Mm-hmm.
over the place. And they're selling the Skittles, and that's illegal. That's just like selling illegal knockoffs of Louis Vuitton.
There's
I've done that.
makeup.
It doesn't work out well.
Yeah.
Louis gives you a call.
There's a bodega down here, Ebor's Supermarket, which is a great place. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with that bodega. But he came to me one day and he was like, "Look at this motherfucker that shows up on Friday, Saturday nights." He had like pictures of a marijuana dispensary in a van car that would like pull up on 7th Ave and park on the side of that and just sell hemp out of their car.
Mobile trappers. That's
They do that in New York. They're all over the place up there.
I'm willing to bet, they're not subject to Chillum or Chill Coffee are. They don't have to be as responsible as us, nor do they want to be.
Yeah, I remember back.
But this is criminal activity.
Yeah.
They're trying to lump together, FTC type things with packaging, with outright people deceiving the public.
Yeah.
And a lot of those bags, they buy the bags empty, and you don't know where they're filling them. They could be filling them with regular Skittles. You don't even know what's in just because the label says what it says. Most of the QR codes go to a dead 404 page anyway.
Yeah.
Well, before we close things out for tonight, here's a question I want to ask all of you. Is this industry capable of policing itself or not?
I think it has been. I honestly, I think it has been. I think that there's a few bad apples out there, and
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the Florida Department of Agriculture has not attempted to police this industry properly. And I think that, there has been a lot of companies that have took it upon themselves to represent this industry properly. I think there's also a lot of people that, I won't even call them companies. A lot of people out there that have tried to capitalize on this industry, but there's people out there that really want to do well. And I think we want to work with the Department of Agriculture to make sure that this company does that this industry does well. But we're kind of being made to seem like we're horrible companies and we're drug dealers and shit like that.
Yeah, and if they shut down all the legal permitted stores and force us to stop, all those illegal people are still going to operate. The little mom and pop gas station that doesn't have a permit anyway, that just puts expired baby food on the counter and fake medicine, Benadryl, they're still going to do that, and legal companies or people trying to do it the right way, they're just confusing it for a reason because they want to abolish us.
Yeah, I think politically, Gary, the answer is a bit more complicated in the sense that you have a political culture which says they support the free market, which is currently in control of Florida, has been in control of Florida for 2 decades, and yet the practice and applications of free market economics doesn't seem to be there. That the Department of Agriculture doesn't want to allow for the free market to take hold, and in fact that they want to overregulate. Like many of the things that you see conservatives, in the GOP in Florida accuse Democrats of doing is they're actually doing right now. Under Nikki Fried, the hemp industry was thriving. Under Wilton Simpson, you have all these crackdowns, and then you have this lumping of like Tom said, of hardworking entrepreneurs, hardworking Americans that are trying to make this budding industry legitimate. And then you have a few bad actors who are trying to make a quick buck. And then by lumping those in, it gives them political ammunition to abolish the whole thing. And that's not right. That's not free market economics. In any
3
way.
days, I got to go up to Tallahassee. In 3 days, the 23rd. I'm going to go up to Tallahassee to go speak at a workshop to try to convince them that things like turmeric and carrot juice are suitable food colorings.
Rather than what? Yellow 5 and red 40? What do they want you to put in the products?
They're arguing that turmeric is going to be too attractive to children.
Turmeric. Okay, so you can't have anything red or orange because that could be attractive to, or pink packaging. I saw that was an example.
It's a distraction. It's a total distraction, guys. They have an agenda to get this gone by the time the vote goes in for adult use. They're doing step by step. I've heard a lot of things about there's a lot of back office deals going on. I was afraid at first when Nikki Fried was putting this program together that it wasn't, but she put together a darn good program.
Yeah.
With no funding.
Yeah.
That operated legitimately without any issues for over 2 years in our market. And only when the tide changed and the people in power changed and there were some people pulling some strings did what we're doing become all wrong.
What I don't want is for Florida to become like what happened in Maryland. Maryland adopted adult use, but the casualty of that was the mom and pop hemp industry. The only people who can sell novel cannabinoids like Delta 8 or CBD are licensed retail places. And to be real with you, True Leaves Lobbyists was a big part of that. Of making sure that made it into the final bill language. And they've done it in Arizona. They've attempted to do it in Florida. And you have carte blanche, bold-faced lying to my face by their lobbyists and by their CEO to my face to telling me that they're not a part of it. And I'm just like...
I'm honestly surprised that DeSantis hasn't taken their license away from them for what's been going on. And once they find out the corruption and the people that are tied into Wilton Simpson.
Okay, here's the deal. Ronnie, guess what? True Leave is woke. Go get him.
They're worse than Disney right now. I'll tell you that much.
There you go. And Tom, to your point about corruption, it was True Leaves corruption that held up the Georgia licensing process. It's True Leaves corruption that's holding up the Alabama licensing process. This is a company that was founded on corruption, that their CEO's husband is sitting in federal prison right now for bribing elected officials to corner the market. I mean, when they got pushed back in Massachusetts, when their workers started to unionize because they had unsafe working conditions, they just pulled out of that state entirely. And that's what we have now is major corporations have the ability to, anytime they encounter resistance, if they're a multi-state operator, they'll just say, oh, it's not worth it. We'll close up shop in that state. We can move into this new industry. We'll make more money in this other state.
Well, with profit being the motive, are there any real good ethical MSOs out there?
We have one local, and one out of all the dispensaries, only one is based out of Florida. All the rest are multi-state operators. Which
is the only one, Chris?
It's Vitacan, if I'm not mistaken. Vitacan is the only,
Jacksonville, right? Yeah,
that's the only Florida-based one. Every other one is operating in other states.
Yeah. Well, I got fooled by True Leave. I'll tell you that much. In the beginning, and I was probably one of the biggest supporters of their launch in the state, as well as Carlos, and I think all of us. And we really had high hopes for the way the market was going to go. But it's happened in other states. Look at what happened in California. Look what happened to Steve D'Angelo in Harborside. The market in California has been decimated by their legalization to bring adult use, and they still don't have it. And they destroyed the CBD market out there. So, I mean, we've seen it happen, and it's almost like a crash and burn everything to the ground, and then we're going to start it all over type atmosphere.
Well, Tom, before we go to the news, what is your vision? Like, what you've been in this long enough, you've been an entrepreneur in not just this industry, but in other ones prior to joining the cannabis industry. So what does legalization look like in your model, in your mind?
I think freedom. I think we need to go back to having the freedom of choice, not to be controlled or told what it is that we have to do, and knowledge. We need more education. We need more real information that is spread to the masses so they can make an educated decision of what's good for them. By allowing the people that are in control of the products right now to push the narrative out to the community and push it out, we're hurting. And the cost of the products is higher. I'm finding that people are going into dispensaries and they're using products that they really shouldn't be using because they're being pushed towards higher THC, and they're being pushed towards things that they're not learning what's really best for them, because we don't have that competitive product out there in the marketplace. So I see freedom of choice, not just for cannabis, but to be able to grow your own food, to be able to grow your own kratom, kava, make your own products. We brew kratom in our stores. We help people to understand how to brew their own. So I think that freedom is going to be what the future needs to be, and people have to look at it that way.
One of these days, we got to show me how I can consume kratom without having to take at least 1 cup of sugar with it.
I have sugar-free options. We brew blends too.
Yeah, it works with monk fruit, I think.
Monk fruit's good.
Carlos, I think it's time for the news on that note.
I like that picture of Chris before he put the wig on.
Well, bringing you the news, Gallup put out a recent poll. Half of all Americans 18 and older, yes, half of U.S. adults acknowledge having tried cannabis. And this is up approximately from 1 in 3 Americans from 2 decades ago. 17% of respondents identified themselves as current marijuana smokers, up from 7% a decade ago. And young adult respondents between the ages of 18 and 34, and those who identified as Democrats, were most likely to acknowledge having prior experience with cannabis. Doesn't mean that folks who are conservative don't use it. They're just less likely to answer it publicly on a poll. So moving forward, recently,
Don't smoke the devil's lettuce.
exactly. So looking at data published in the International Journal of Drug Policy, an analysis showed that healthcare insurance premiums actually declined following the adoption of medical cannabis legalization. Researchers affiliated with Bowling Green State University in both Ohio and Illinois State University assessed the impact of state-specific medical cannabis legalization laws on individual health insurance premiums, and investigators compared trends in premium costs in states with and without legalization over an 11-year period from 2010 to 2021, and they reported that prices fell for individual premiums in medical cannabis states as compared to where jurisdictions and where marijuana remains illegal. Shocker there. People are less likely to have to go to the doctor once they get access to a therapeutic substance like cannabis. So on the political note, voters in Ohio this November will decide on adult use measure, and in the ballot proposal will allow for possession up to 2.5 ounces or 15 grams of concentrate by adults. Ohioans will also be able to purchase at retail locations or grow up to 12 plants in a private residence where at least 2 adults reside. The retail cannabis products will be taxed at 10%, and sales are anticipated to generate between $276 million to $403 million annually in cannabis tax dollars by their 5th year of sales. And so when we were touching earlier about politicians changing their mind, tax dollars are one thing that changes a lot of people's minds, because if you have this new niche market of people to tax, then you can supplement revenues and then give out tax breaks to your campaign donors, and it never it won't affect the bottom line, if you will, in the grand scheme of things. And so that's why we're seeing this shift of these more conservative folks who we never thought would be in favor of it to be in favor of it, because it will allow them to give their campaign donors the tax breaks that they've been harping on, and they can just replace those revenues with cannabis taxes. And that is the problem that we continue to see in some of these markets like California and even in Florida and Colorado, where you're overtaxing people and driving them back to the gray market, into the illicit market. So
I give all the prayers and love to Ohio, who is starting to evolve in the right direction. They have been through so many trials and tribulations, so many bad political moves, including a ballot measure that was basically made by 8 people who were going to be in charge of the entire industry as soon as they got their bill passed, because they actually got together and fought a bill that prevented citizen initiatives from being blocked in regards to having to have a 60% of the vote, which actually happened over here, and they did it while we weren't looking, so to speak.
Yeah, I found it ironic. Bernie Sanders was, tweeting about, folks turning out to vote against that, and I chimed in. I said, look, don't let Ohio become like Florida. They did that to us, and now they're trying to bump it up to 66%. There is no stopping people who want to camp down on direct democracy. When you have politicians that don't want to do their job, and the will of the voters wants to supersede that through citizen initiatives, through ballot initiatives, and then the politicians see that it's successful. For example, Amendment 2 and what we've done with that, what we've done with trying to protect our wetlands, what we've done in Florida with trying to restore rights to people who have served their debt to society. It's not popular when politicians get their job done for them by the people. We, the people, then have to re-examine why are these people in office in the first place. And continuing with the news, Carlos, this might be important to you. An analysis coming out of the American Journal of Cardiology shows that marijuana use is not associated with an elevated risk of heart attack. Yes. And so researchers affiliated with the University of California, San Diego, assessed the relationship between cannabis use and physician-diagnosed myocardial infarction in a nationally representative group of nearly 10,000 middle-aged subjects, which is 35 to 59.
Just to be clear, I don't blame cannabis for my inevitable heart attack. I blame Bisco.
Exactly. And so, wanted to wrap up the news here. And looking at where we're at, in appeals court recently, that is the 3-panel judge appeals court out of the Fifth Circuit, is a court of appeals in New Orleans, ruled that a 1968 law prohibiting possession or sale of a firearm to an unlawful user of a federally controlled substance should not be applied so broadly that we will criminalize all gun owners with a prior history of marijuana use. The case in question involved a man sentenced to 4 years in prison after police found firearms and a marijuana cigarette butt in his vehicle. Although the defendant acknowledged he occasionally smokes marijuana, prosecutors presented no evidence that implied that he was under the influence of cannabis at the time of his arrest. The justices opined that throughout American history, laws have regulated the combination of guns and intoxicating substances. But at no point in the 18th or 19th century did the government disarm individuals who use drugs or alcohol at one time from possessing guns at another. In short, our history and tradition may support some limits on an intoxicated person's right to carry a weapon, but it does not justify disarming a sober citizen based exclusively on his past drug use, nor do more generalized traditions of disarming dangerous persons support this restriction on nonviolent drug users. So, kudos to Nikki Fried for her, lawsuit against the Biden administration. A shout out to Normal and the legal committee for filing these amicus briefs and supporting these. As we see this move forward, we're going to see some change, hopefully, here at the federal level soon. And that hope is on the way. My last article that we covered today is that a bipartisan bill coming out of Congress has been filed to protect people from being denied federal employment or security clearances due to marijuana use and provide relief for people who lost job opportunities due to cannabis in the past. And this is coming from Representative Jamie Raskin in Maryland, who introduced the legislation titled the Cannabis Users Restoration of Eligibility, the CURE Act, this past Thursday. And his co-sponsor is Representative Nancy Mace, Republican from South Carolina, who's been on this show, who signaled her interest in partnering with Raskin at a House Oversight Subcommittee hearing last year when the congressman announced his intent to issue on this act. For those of you who don't realize, there were tons of people who came in that were qualified to be a part of the Biden administration, and they essentially had their job offers withdrawn when it came to light that they had used cannabis in the past. The fact is that cannabis use does not necessarily make you a bad government employee. It doesn't make you a dangerous person to carry firearms. And we have to put an end to government overreach in infringing on our civil rights as cannabis users. And I'm thankful that organizations like NORML exist. I'm thankful that organization like Suncoast NORML exists. I am proud and honored to be part of this organization with so many great people. I just want to take this last moment to thank Carlos, Gary, Tiffany, Carla, Sue, and Kelly, our board, for being amazing people. Thank you to Tom for giving us our first home over at Common Bond when we were just starting this chapter. And so I just want to close out today with saying that we would not be in the place that we are today without those three gentlemen that you see on the screen there, and all the amazing ladies who you don't see on the screen.
Now, Chris, I'm not totally familiar with the congressional districts over in Maryland, but is not Jimmy Raskin the congressman over your district?
So I'm still registered to vote in Florida because I want my swing vote to matter. But yeah, Maryland congressional districts are pretty broad. There is a race right now to replace the U.S. Senator in Maryland who's retiring. And so it will be interesting to see how that all shakes out in the grand scheme of things and where the shuffle is. But Maryland is a triple blue state. Virginia, could turn triple blue in its next election, and so we could see some things change here. But all in all, Congress still remains the biggest holdup in the D.C. area with its over preemption of D.C. laws. We still don't have retail dispensaries in Washington D.C. because Congress are holding it up. And shout out to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton for continuing to push for the rights of cannabis users. She has been a civil rights legend, and she continues to fight for our civil rights as cannabis users.
And she had a great appearance on this show last year, too, which was wonderful. Indeed. But Congressman Raskin, just so you know, there's a Jew on the show. Come on. We'll schmooze, okay?
So, Tom, we're running to the end of the show. Just wanted to give you just a little bit of time, zoom in on your face there, and let people know how they can get a hold of you, how they can support you.
Yeah, well, before I go into that, I want to thank you guys, Chris, for staying the course. Chris just brought up Common Bond, and that feels like lifetimes ago. And, I know I stepped away for a while, and I've been doing lots of different projects, but you guys have seriously stayed the course pretty much every day, every week since we were doing it together 10 years ago. And I think it's real important that people like yourselves, are out here, and thank you for bringing me out today. With what I've got going on, I'm usually at Chill Coffee in Valrico. I'm there every weekend. At our store, we're doing a lot of education. I'm doing Wise Warrior Boxing right now, which is what we spoke about earlier, which is integrating boxing. Psychedelics are a great way to deal with mental health, but so is exercise. And I think that using active meditation, which is what boxing therapy provides, is going to be the next wave of recognize. And we're working on trying to get people. I'm planning another ayahuasca retreat that I'm going to go on. I may be going this weekend. If not this weekend, I'll be going again in September. I'm going to get some things cleared up in my head. Last 10 years, I've been working in this cannabis space since 2013. So this is time for me to start planning the next decade and what's going to be there, and pulling together everything that I've been working on for the last 10 years, whether it's in cannabis or startups. My books are all available on Amazon. So I have the 3 on psychedelics. I have a workbook on psilocybin and mushrooms, on how to take a journey on your own and stay on track and set your intentions and do integration post experience. But I think that's it. You can find me on YouTube, on Facebook, and Instagram.
And Gary,
yeah,
how do you join Suncoast NORML? I want to join.
I thought you already were joined.
Oh, I don't think so.
No, this is
it lapsed.
It was the only vegetarian when I first met him. That's how disconnected he was. But at least he understands that people with hangovers cannot look at tie-dye in the morning. So basically, what you got in here are the folks coming in here who have already been baked. So that was good. That's a good marketing ploy right there. But you can join Suncoast NORML by going to suncoastnormal.org//membership. And go ahead and put in your $25. And with that, you get a discount over here over at Chillum. You get a fantastic card from National Normal saying you are definitely a normal, and you get a chance to join us in our journey to make the laws happen. We are going to continue working this next session to go ahead and push these bills, but we need your time as well as your treasure. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, hey, I want to invite you guys out. We're doing an Italian feast in November at Chill Coffee. I totally forgot about it, but we're doing it in conjunction with Rosati's. So we're going to have pasta stations, and it's going to be on Veterans Day. So Pablo's going to be out there, 1620 Marine. We're also doing a 9/11 commemorative on September 10th. So if you guys are able to, I'd love to have both of you come out if you have time, and anybody out there watching that wants to participate, reach out to me and let me know. So September 10th and November 12th, we're going to be doing stuff in Valrico.
Sounds
if
like
there's a good carbonara there, I will be there.
Dude, we're going to have all kinds. We're going to have a D. Martin impersonator, some bocce ball going on, gelato, affogatos, all kinds of Italians.
this guy's wife makes the best cannoli ever. Hey,
Cannoli cake too.
There's one more. Oh, casada cake.
Leave the pipe, take the cannoli.
So there's one more thing that we got to talk about here, and I'll just go ahead and cover all our ugly faces. But we have a membership meeting coming up. So the thing going on that Tom just plugged, the Chill Coffee, is going to be a great way to network. But if you can't make it out there, this Thursday at 7 p.m. on Zoom, we're going to be having a membership meeting for Suncoast Normal. And you can sign up on our website or on Facebook. And come check it out, see what we're all about. This is a good way to figure out what, not just what's happening in the movement, but all the things that Gary Stein does to try to, legalize it and try to, make progress as far as the legislature is concerned, and, future events when, really just to talk to us. Tom, you come into our Zoom meeting?
I'm going to try. I'll try and get on there.
You better.
Send it on over.
You better, my friend.
Do we talk about UAPs and aliens on there?
You can talk about whatever you want. I might mute you, but if it's not about marijuana. But
me and Lucius have been having some meetups over at Chill Coffee.
I haven't talked to Lucius in a long time.
Oh, I was on his podcast last week. So I don't know if you guys remember Lucius Skate Case. He's a very interesting individual, and
he was on our board once.
He was. He mentioned that.
He made that giant blunt.
Well, as long as I can make myself a big cafe con leche, or at the alternate cafe con mezcal.
We do colada.
Oh, there you go.
Muy fuerte.
I love a good horchata if you can do the rice thing.
The rice thing? What's that?
Horchata. Look it up. Starts with an H.
Okay. Is that a Jewish thing?
No, it's Mexican.
Oh.
It's Mexican. It's a rice and cinnamon drink.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I've never heard of it.
See, you learn something every day here on the rotation.
This is.
I know rice. That's what they make arsenic out of, right? I think my wife's
the most awkward send off. But bye, everybody.